Crispy, let's just get right into it. Now, again, this is an article. This was written by Michael Hugland of WindowsCentral.com. And it goes on to say in the header, no, Target and Walmart are not removing Xbox products from their stores as Xbox misinformation reaches new levels. Folks, again, if you did not, if you weren't privy to the conversation that we're about to have over the weekend, it was reported by Shinobi602, who I talk very highly about. I like him a lot. He's a great poster on X. He, provides a lot of big information. But him, along with many others, and I don't want to, we're not throwing anybody under the bus, folks. We're just we got to put the names out there of who reported this. That there were some pictures that were being shared around by posters on X. Some of them were from people that don't have channels. They were just, hey, listen, I was at my local Walmart and I didn't notice, but now I did. There's no Xbox games. And then, of course, it's the picture that Shinobi602 was sharing that even some of the bigger publications actually reported on. And you know what's interesting? Shout out to Colt Eastwood, who did a little bit of digging. The picture in question that was being shared, Crispy Bomb, was from 2023. The last time I checked, and I'm no mathematician, it's been 2 years since that picture was taken and posted on Reddit. We're in 2025. As a matter of fact, we are 2 shakes of a stick from moving into 2026. So, yeah, I gotta say, and again, I don't think I have to say it, but I'm going to say it. If you are going to use a picture that's being shared on Reddit, you might want to do a little bit of homework to see when and where that picture was posted and taken and what year it was taken in, because it kind of makes you look a little silly. Now, granted, again, we're not, council warring here, but, MBG did a video about Xbox pulling the wares off of the shelves. Dreamcast guy, once again, reconfirmed, or should I say reconfirmed that Xbox was dead. And these are characters that we know are going to do these things for clicks. And it's their shtick, ladies and gentlemen. It's what they do. So what we're going to do today is read a little bit from the article and kind of maybe reaffirm the Xbox tax. And I know someone is, already, with potentially with a virtual tomato in hand, but folks, I don't know how else to put it. Like, I mean, we talked about this last week, Crispy. The hate on this brand is on a level that I don't think I've ever seen. And I've been gaming a super long time. Like, you can say whatever you want about Sega and them going, leaving the hardware business. You can say what you want about Atari or any of the defunct, publishers. And you can even have, questions and theories and even some, pointed thoughts about what Sony has done or what they haven't done for first party, or what Nintendo did, changing what $80 games look like and the potential of, the entire industry moving with Nintendo's first $80 game. And you wouldn't be wrong, folks. There are a lot of questions and conversations in everything I just said. But what is interesting to me, and I want you to walk with me on this, folks. I want to paint the picture. Now, look, I'm considered an Xbot, right? And that's fine. Xbox is my platform of choice, and I don't make any qualms for it. I love everything about it. I love the achievement system. I love having my friends list as stout as it is. I like first party. I love Game Pass, despite me pushing back on an increase of $10. The controller is the best in the business. Quick Resume is still one of the biggest and best, additives to gaming this generation than anything before it. But I just want to focus your attention, ladies and gentlemen, on 2025, just the year itself. So if we take the big three and you just put them on the pedestals at the end of the year, it is going to be Xbox that reigns supreme on many levels. And this isn't a console war rhetoric narrative. This isn't me, trying to prop up the $4 trillion company. This is just hashtag facts, Crispy. And the truth of the matter is very simple, is we have seen a year for first party games unlike anything that we have seen before it. 2025, when the year is done, when November has gone and passed and Call of Duty Black Ops 7 is out, Xbox would have put out almost a dozen games from first party that they have been a part of, whether it be first party Xbox game studios or studios they've worked with that they've invested in, and it has become considered a second party release, like Ninja Gaiden 4. When you look, and again, this is no shade towards Nintendo, but even Nintendo's first party has been light. They have a few games coming out. I'm buying every one of them. Donkey Kong is still up there in my top 5 of the year. Obviously Mario Kart World, not as great as I was hoping it would be when you compare it to something like Sonic Racing Worlds. I actually like Sonic better. But if we just use Xbox and PlayStation as the stopgaps for this conversation, Crispy, it's clear as day who the winner of 2025 is going to be. And if all that you are going to bring to the table is console sales, then of course they have sold a lot of consoles and they continue to sell a lot of consoles. But you know what they don't have a lot of? Innovation. It's very PlayStation. They're not doing anything new, meaning that Xbox this week has 2 pieces of OEM Xbox branded handhelds releasing. They also have, and I want to shout out Stallion 83. That's Mr. Millionaire. And I don't mean that in money. I mean that he's the first dude to hit a million gamer score. I follow him. I don't know if he follows me yet. Stallion, if you're listening, brother, hit that follow button for me. That'd be really cool. But he says this in a tweet, and I think that it is so pointed, it's so simplistic, but it has so much weight to it that it really does, I think, explain the year that we're talking about, Crispy. And it says, Xbox over the next month, but Xbox is dead. Cut the BS. And that means you have Keeper releasing later this week, Ninja Gaiden 4, The Elder Worlds 2, and Black Ops 7. Now, if you really want to get pointed, if you really want to be a D, you could take this block of games that are coming out over the course of the next 45 days from start to finish, not even 2 months, 45 days, give or take. And you can say that Xbox Game Studios will have put out more games in 45 days than PlayStation has put out in 2 years. Think about that for a second. But somehow, some way, Crispy, Xbox is dying. Now, of course, I want to focus your attention, ladies and gentlemen, to what happened this week. And I want to continue reading from the article, again, written by Michael Hugland of WindowsCentral.com. And it goes on to say this in the subcategory. One thing after another, Microsoft is forced to respond time and time again on ongoing rumors that it's leaving the hardware space. And I'm going to read again, verbatim, right from the article, folks. In a new Xbox rumor started this weekend that's now blown out of proportion, as usual, late into the evening on Saturday, Redditors flocked to the Xbox subreddit as someone claimed that their local Target had begun removing the Xbox section from their store. Then, various blog sites who seem oddly invested in the concept of, quote, Xbox dying ran with the headlines based on said anonymous reports, likely buoyed by the fact that Costco recently had reduced its Xbox offering, compounding expectations of a wider retail route. The article goes on to say this: From the post spawned a number of stories where the other Redditors began sharing that they have seen stock within their local Targets or Walmart stores for months. Counter reports came from various sources, like shout out to Destin Legary, who actually had this to say. Destin goes on to say, I have his post that I'm going to add to the show notes. It says, I just called my local Walmart to ask if they were discontinuing or pulling Xbox stock. They said, at least to my knowledge, I haven't heard anything about that, like clearing inventory or having like that, or about discontinuing anything. They also still said that they have a number of items in stock. Now, if you read the second tweet from Destin, he also reconfirmed that whoever he spoke to in Target said that they hadn't gotten a shipment in a while, but they were expecting a new shipment according to the documents that they had in front of them on the 19th of November. Now that kind of, that's kind of rolling into, I would imagine, and I'm not November, October. So the 19th of October is this week. They're expecting a shipment. So that means that they are still partnered. Now, interestingly enough there, Crispy, isn't it hilarious that in the last couple of weeks, even though Xbox has been doing great with their first party, they've been adding a ridiculous amount of games to Xbox Game Pass. They have four first-party games coming out in the next 45 plus days, more than Sony has done in 2 years. They're doing in less than 2 months. And somehow, some way, Xbox or Microsoft proper has to drop a presser. And I have that presser in front of me. It goes on, and it's simple, folks. It's a simplistic, I wish it was a little bit more, but I don't think it needed to be. It says this. Now, again, this is a Microsoft spokesperson that, remember, if you couple of the last weekend, they had to come out and say, and it says this, and again, shout out to JB Shy on Twitter. He says, for those in the back, Target and Walmart, among other retailers, remain committed partners for Xbox consoles, accessories, and games. End quote. Simple, but I think enough to give anyone doubt the answers that they're looking for. Crispy, let's try and make sense of this Xbox negativity, or hashtag Xbox tax.
Well, it's nice to have a little bit of more knowledge than most people about this, being a retail manager. Let's think about it for a second. A lot of people will blame whatever they want to blame. They're coming out of this multiple different ways. The fact is that there could be a fact that we've already seen Walmart say they're going to reduce a lot of their physical stuff. Target's probably just not announcing it. And also, these things are physical, not just, a code, because I'm sure there's probably code cards sitting there. You got to think that maybe they're reducing stock because they're worried about these tariffs. Now, this is one of those instances where it could be logical. There's also, we're going into the holidays, and a lot of these companies like to re-merchandise their areas. So, hypothetically, if one thing is going to sell more than the other, they might expand or contract. That said, that doesn't mean that they're going to continually have these things come into stock until they redo that said section. I do it all the time in my meat case. Okay, as we get into colder weather, we reduce sizes on grilling stuff, and we increase sizes on like stewing beef, for example. And at that point in time, there may be out of stocks and other such things. If you're going to go and look at that and say that, oh, there's nothing there, where's the narrative that nothing there doesn't mean that they're selling more? You know what I mean? It's just, you can't look at a retail space and know exactly what's going to transpire. You could walk in that place a week later and the entire electronics section looks totally different. And that's where I say, if they're going to reduce stock in something, it's going to be a company that has a great, member service as Game Pass. And when you look at it, they keep, saying, hey, like these Bethesda games, oh, we're releasing a physical version. We're releasing a physical version. Why do they keep doing that? Is it so they put it in nowhere? I mean, they're not going to have it anywhere. The narrative has just these like mixed feelings of like, I just hate Xbox, and I walked into my Target that day and it just, it didn't look right. So that's the way it is. And then a lot of them are using that said picture from 2023. I mean, does anybody remember the out of stocks we had during COVID? Does anyone remember that? Because I do. I mean, do you know how hard it was to like have a full case during that time for me? It was ridiculous. I mean, and a prime example is just on Sunday, I get my order in and an entire page is out of stock. So that's like 30 items. So now I have holes all over my case. Does that mean that I'm not carrying them? No, they just didn't get to the warehouse quick enough. These things happen. Okay, so maybe there's some logistics going on with Xbox right now. There's a lot of companies that rent space. You don't know if Sony's technically a vendor and they rent space to sell their product, and Xbox doesn't do that. We don't know all those logistics, because if you go into a grocery store and you're going to go buy Pepsi, guess who stocks that? Not us. The Pepsi company stocks that because they pay for that space. So you have to understand that you don't know what companies are doing that and not. And then they are become prioritized in a way. So all you need is that confirmation of Microsoft, Xbox saying this is not true. Okay. And you could for all you know, in the next couple weeks, go in and your entire electronics section is totally different in a Walmart or Target. So let's not jump to conclusions. And that's what we try not to do here. Sometimes we get it wrong, obviously, but this is one of those times where why would you go into a holiday and completely eliminate storefront sections? It does not make sense. And if they did that, and if it comes out later that this was all true, we're going to hold their feet to the fire. But as of now, they have told you that it's not true.
I mean, you couldn't have made any better sense. I think when you kind of just stop and listen to everything that Crispy just said, this is coming from a retail manager. Now, granted, obviously, meat products are different than video games, obviously, ladies and gentlemen, but business is business. And he brought up a phenomenal bunch of points. I didn't even expect him to go into his background, but thank you for doing that, Crispy, because you did really bring it to a boil. Folks, I have some numbers. I have stats. You know how I feel about this. Evidence-based conversation is my favorite because we can all have our opinions, right? They're like a-holes. We all have them and they all stink, right? So just like that, I'm all about the evidence-based conversation because even though we're allowed to have difference of opinions and maybe never even agree, hard to argue the actual numbers because the numbers, ladies and gentlemen, are the facts. So, physical games. I have some numbers that are going to blow your mind. So, if you are wondering how big the decline is, well, there's been numerous reports where I'm going to read one more specifically, the headline. The decline of physical games is accelerating and it's troubling for the gaming space. That's just one headline. But you want to talk numbers? Okay, let's talk numbers. So, since 2021, if you want to know the how bad physical games are down, since 2021, we're in 2025. It's a 4-year difference. They're down over 50% across the board in gaming. 50%. Since 2008 and its peak, they're down over 85+% on physical game sales. Pretty crazy. So we already knew this because last year it was announced that Walmart and Target would not be carrying physical games for Xbox. This was widely known, which is why I'm so surprised that you saw numerous publications running with a story. And the worst part of it, Fuzzy, is that they used a picture that was posted by not only Shinobi 602, but a bunch of others, and especially a bunch of other, trolls of the interwebs. And instead of actually doing their groundwork to find out when and where this picture was taken, this picture from 2023 from Reddit of all places that has not been verified, that has not been confirmed. They ran with the stories, once again proving that the hashtag Xbox tax exists, and people, including publications, will take it and run with any bad Xbox news. And when you just take a step back, and I'm not talking about the entire, generation since 2020's launch. I'm talking, let's just look at the numbers for this year. Xbox is delivering 2 pieces of new hardware. Yes, they are OEM hardware. They are partnered hardware, but it's Xbox branded. You're not getting me off this square, ladies and gentlemen. It's an Xbox handheld that's coming from Asus. It's co-developed by Xbox. I don't know what more you need, but if you need more, this is not the podcast for you, ladies and gentlemen. I'll tell you that right now. If we want to talk about the games, because if I recall very, very, quickly, how often when PlayStation was hitting on all cylinders, Fuzzy, was it about the games, right? Well, Xbox is going to have nearly a dozen games by every size, by every ilk, from first party, dropped into Xbox Game Pass. Now, granted, again, we're still sore and a little aggravated, and even some of us pissed off about an increase in price. And I'm there with you, folks. I'm going to continue to beat the drum. I think it was a mistake. But you cannot argue that Xbox first party is delivering. So if they are delivering on new pieces of hardware that are going to give you the ability to play your games on the go, dock it to your TV if you want, and a lineup that has more games in a 12-month span from January to December than Sony has had nearly 3 years. But somehow, Fuzzy Belvedere, Xbox is dying once again. Let's get your thoughts on this, man.
I've never seen a group of people so set on killing off a brand. It started with the whole, Game Pass price increase, which, yes, rightfully so, we gave them, our pointed thoughts on that. And then it was like, oh, well, they're not making hardware anymore. And they, said, look at what we said with AMD and, reiterated that. And then there was the leak, which I still have my doubts on some of the specs, but there was a leak of the Magnus chip, which is evident that it's going to be for the next Xbox console. And now we're focusing once again on sales. And somebody pointed in a super chat, which I'll let you get to that later. But it no matter what Xbox does, they're always going to be at fault, or they're always going to be in the wrong. It's either the items aren't selling because the shelves are full, or the items are selling and they rather say, oh well, no, they're not on the shelves because they're pulling stock or pulling, from the industry. It's like the funniest thing for me, it's all of the ponies out there, and I'll call them ponies, for the fact that you had Baby Steps, which was claimed to be this great transformational
Game of the year.
that came out like a little less than a month ago, like 2 or 3 weeks ago. Nobody's really talking about it. Ghost of Yotai, which is supposed to be their go-to thing. It's another movie game that's first party. Crickets out there. I mean, sure, there are some that was like, oh, it's game of the year, but they rather focus on Xbox being sold out over at Target or what was it, Sam's Club, like a week or so ago, where they were doing clearance, more than likely to make room for the upcoming holiday inventory. They wanted to make sure that, oh, everybody knew that Xbox must be leaving the game because these stores are clearing off their shelves. I don't know. I always look at it as, no matter what Xbox does, they're going to make up a narrative that goes in the opposite direction of what Xbox is actually doing. They have hardware. Is it first party hardware? No, but it's hardware that they've spent the money in marketing and advertising and R&D funding to help produce with Asus, and that's coming out. They have a ton of games that are coming out throughout this year, like Boom said, more in the past 12 months than other first party platforms did in the past couple of years. So it, I don't know why people are so focused on this. Like I'll be honest, the only problem I have with Xbox and their hardware right now is the price going up. Being that if one of my consoles, God forbid, knock on wood, it ever breaks or has an issue, then the cost to replace that is higher than when I originally bought it. That's my only complaint with them when it comes to hardware right now. Outside of that, I'm not going to a Target or a Best Buy to see how many Xboxes are on the shelf. I have an Xbox already on my TV stand. Why am I going to look to see how many are still left? I'm not buying them as Christmas gifts for people, and I'm not looking for how many PS5s on the shelves. It's also on my TV stand. So I don't know. Even as a gaming enthusiast, I still don't understand some of the behaviors of people. And then as far as Reddit has its pros and cons. I know a few people are like, "What are you bad mouthing Reddit about?" You all know exactly the parts of Reddit where it's the trolling aspect that you see, and it's not the main part of Reddit. Reddit is usually good as far as for do-it-yourself pointers, tips, or like shortcuts or cheat code type things, as far as uh, stuff that you could either do with electronics or stuff around the house type of thing, or it's way people get some information on upcoming movies, games, and so forth. And it's a variety of different subreddit you know paths that you can read through and enjoy the info. But then there's the parts that are like Reset Era and all of those real troll like forums where it's like, oh, Xbox is dead. Xbox has been dead for the past 20 years and it has no games, even though it's released 12 games plus this year. No, they don't have any games. But oh well, we're getting the whole slate. Well, how could you get a whole slate of games on the PlayStation platform if they didn't have any games? It's I don't know. I feel like we're paying attention too much to the, and I hate using this reference, but I gotta call it. We're paying too much attention to the people on the short bus when we should be paying attention to the games. Like if people are all up in arms about seeing that a Sam's Club is clearing off their shelves of Xboxes, but yet we already have an Xbox, why are we getting all worked up over that? Like unless we're looking to get that second, Series X or Series S, it shouldn't even be on our radar. It should be the things that should be on the radar is the fact that Keeper's coming out in a couple of days, or that Outer Worlds 2 is in like a week or so. So it's like I think that would be the main thing to give airtime to as far as these media outlets. I mean, sure, they might see things like Xbox not being on shelves, or supposedly the rumor of them pulling product from retailers, or retailers deciding to give up on selling the product, which I don't know. I just it seems like idiocracy nowadays, where I'm a store and I'm gonna not sell stuff because I don't like money anymore for whatever reason. I just don't understand this concept where can we see, or can anybody point out, let's say, just for example's sake, a discontinued product where, or not a discontinued product, a product that's still in production where the manufacturer or the retailer just doesn't want to sell it anymore. Even though they could get more of them, they don't want to sell it anymore because, well, it's not selling. So they cut the price. Well, the price will help move whatever they have. But I think the last time I've seen it where a retailer has removed something from the shelves, that whether it's selling or not, it comes down to like a recall or a safety or some sort of issue where it could cause harm to their customers, or it could be a liability. A console, for all intents and purposes, even if they only sell one a month, they're going to sell them. And if the manufacturer chooses to send them more on a PO that they've requested, they'll continue to sell them. I can't see a retailer saying, you know what, the old Switch isn't selling as much as it used to because the Switch 2 is now taking all the sales. We're just going to pull all those from the shelves. It's like that's not how retail works. And I would think that there was enough people that have shopped over their lifetime that would understand that simple concept, that stores don't typically just pull things off the shelf unless there's a safety concern or something along those lines. But once again, we're giving airtime to the people on the short bus, and they're going to continue to come up with other narratives. Like with Xbox doing the response next week, it will be something about the Series S again, or it will be about how Phil should retire, or it'll be about how they didn't keep their promise for first party games being exclusive when they acquired Bethesda. Like it never ends. It's like for those that are not interested in the Xbox ecosystem, please focus on your own ecosystem because it's getting to the point where it's laughable that Sony is only coming up with one or two first party a year. Like we spent 500 plus on a PS5 for it to collect dust on, from first party. But then again, I guess they also play the multiplats there, which I understand. I'm not going to play my multiplats there. I play them on Xbox because in a lot of cases it's play anywhere, so I can play it on PC, carry my save over to console, and vice versa. But it just feels like we're giving too much attention to the nonsense out there, and it seems like it's going to continue the more we pay attention to it. But that's my rambling 2 cents on it.
Well, it's 2 cents that I'm happy to have, brother. And it makes a lot of sense. Again, why pull things off a shelf if they're going to sell? If it's not a safety issue, like Fuzzy was saying, you're not going to get rid of it unless Xbox is leaving the business, which we know they're not. But you know what? Let me add some additional context to the story. Now we're going to move on to the Outer Worlds conversation because we got a story from Windows Central that gives some insight into how serious Obsidian was in the development process of the Outer Worlds 2, which is releasing later this month, but also who helped them, which is, I think, the biggest and most interesting part of the story. But check this out. So Windows Central themselves did some groundwork investigative, should I say investigative groundwork? That's the way it should have been said. They spoke to a few Target employees on their end who discredited the claims of a wider Xbox removal within the company. Oh, well, that's pretty interesting because, wow, that's facts. But here is where it gets even better. According to the story, even the legendary Xbox alumni Larry Major Nelson chimed in, stating that, and this is a quote from Larry, "All I know is I went to a couple of Targets and GameStop stores this week, and I did find Xbox hardware and games for sale. I even did a little investigative work by going to my local Target during an unrelated errand where I stopped by to check on the shelves. And sure enough, everything was there except for the consoles themselves. When I checked on their website, I noticed that Target did not have a single Xbox Series X for sale and it was made unavailable, but multiple Xbox Series S consoles were there for purchase. But Xbox stock does seem to tend to fluctuate heavily as Microsoft seems to manufacture them, particularly to order these days." So again, it goes on to say in the story, the Xbox Series X is regularly sold out as Microsoft seems particularly fearful of creating what they're quoting oversupply situations for whatever reason. Some of that is silicon that is being used to power the Xbox cloud gaming. However, which is another angle likely at play here. So, folks, we have the information. We have it on multiple accounts. And we did have Destin Legary, which again, shout out to Destin for literally taking the time, calling a couple of stores as he's done before and getting the skinny. And of course, when he reported on it, he actually put out a post where people are now yelling at him because he came up with the actual facts. Folks, this is what we're talking about. This is how you know that I know that if Paris is listening, he's probably shaking his head. And him and I are never, ever going to agree. But I consider that man an extension of my family, like a brother. And we are on two sides of these on the spectrum, and we can meet in the middle. But he's never going to agree with me, and I am never going to agree with him about the Xbox tax. It is real, it is apparent, and it has happened once again. And I'm glad that Xbox did come out, and even though the quote on the presser was very short and to the point, I think that's all it actually needed to be. But look, at the end of the day, folks, Xbox is maybe not selling as many consoles as the Switch 2 or the PS5, and maybe they never will. But they rest assured, their hardware still remains a part of gaming, and they do have new hardware coming this year in the form of the OEM hardware from Asus, which is partnered. There is rumors that we're going to get into potentially tomorrow about the Game Awards actually levying an Xbox OEM announcement. That is something that is a running rumor, right? That's happening supposedly next year. And we know in 2027, ladies and gentlemen, and chat, and of course, panel, that they're going to have potentially not one, but two SKUs, one of which is going to be the big boy underneath the TV, manufactured and produced by Microsoft, and the rumored handheld dockable from Microsoft. So, folks, hardware isn't going anywhere. And yes, have they reduced their sales in regards to physical sales? It's true. That is happening. But physical sales are down across the board, ladies and gentlemen. This is not just an Xbox problem. This is an everyone problem.